I have a history of getting along with almost everybody. In Washington, I have as many Democrat friends as I have Republican friends, so I get along with almost everybody. But I've never worked with a more miserable son of a bitch.
So I know a little tough to make out there. You could hear the laughter, clearly lines being well received. What you were listening to was the actual audio of those comments from John Boehner that everyone's been talking about today, where he compared Ted Cruz to Lucifer in the flesh, his direct words there. Ted Cruz this morning fired back. He was asked directly by Hallie Jackson what he thought of those comments as he was at a campaign event with his running mate Carly Fiorina. Take a listen.
Donald's writing checks to Boehner, he's writing checks to Hillary, he's funding the corrupt system. It is unaccountable to the people. Donald Trump is playing a part, playing a role, to use the words of his lobbyist campaign manager, pretending to be an outsider. Donald Trump is the ultimate Washington insider. He is a lobbyist who's gotten rich, exploiting government power.
Ted Cruz there, and part of his reaction to the comments, turning it around there to paint himself as an outsider in Washington, saying that he had never really worked with the former speaker and hadn't really talked with him at all either. Joining us now, a member of the House GOP leadership, Congressman Luke Messer of Indiana. Nice to have you with us today, sir.
Yeah, great to be on.
So those comments are getting a lot of traction, as we know today, on both sides. Give us a sense, how closely have you worked with Ted Cruz in Washington?
Well, I've worked with them both. I was a member of House leadership with John Boehner. I've worked on education reform issues with Senator Ted Cruz. Professionally, I respect them both. But most importantly, frankly, I think that kind of personality politics doesn't help us win this presidential campaign. I mean, at one level here, you just laugh it off as another day in the crazy life of this very unique campaign. But as Republicans, we better be focused on policies and principles, because when we get into personality battles, we almost always lose.
That has been a major focus, though, for many of the candidates on the trail. You mentioned the importance of turning it back to the issues. It's not happening. How do you turn that conversation around?
Well, I think it's our leaders matter. You know, I'm actually in the middle of a congressional campaign too in just a few days, and we're trying to focus on what can we do to get America going again. When we do that, we win, because the policies of personal responsibility, of fiscal responsibility, of a strong national defense are policies, frankly, America flocks to. I think a lot of this kind of personality silliness in the end doesn't help us with the ultimate goal here, which is to win a presidential campaign.
A lot of focus, of course, on the Hoosier State these days, on Indiana, with the primary coming up on Tuesday. Folks looking at who could take this state. There was so much discussion at the beginning of the week about this so-called alliance between Ted Cruz and John Kasich to try to keep Indiana away from Donald Trump. Ted Cruz, of course, had that gaffe when it came to Hoosiers and the basketball ring, as he called it. And I know you said in an interview, quote, "You can't help but wins. In Indiana, it's a basketball hoop or basketball goal." Married to a Hoosier, so I get that. I got to tell you, when you see these kind of gaffes on the campaign trail, though, that is very serious. Even as we laugh about it a little bit, does that have an impact on Ted Cruz?
Listen, it's hard to run for president. It's hard to speak thousands and thousands of words and not misspeak. But in Indiana, it is a basketball goal or a basketball hoop or a basketball rim, not a ring. And it's the kind of thing people talk about in coffee shops. You know, from my perspective, if you want to appeal to Hoosiers, you've got to appeal based on policy and principle. They're not impressed with politics. So I think that this pact between Senator Kasich, there you go, I misspoke, Governor Kasich and Senator Cruz is something that won't persuade. I think there's potential on policy for Senator Cruz to win here. I have to tell you, not only have I not endorsed between these three candidates, I'm frankly an undecided voter that's going to decide in the next 5 days who I'm voting for in the primary, and it's going to be based on what I hear from these candidates on policy and principles in the final 5 days.
Do you honestly think, though, that in the final 5 days, sir, you're going to hear anything different?
I can always hope.
So there's that. You know, we've been talking today throughout the day with our own Luke Russert as part of his reporting about these weekly meetings and the meetings that the Trump campaign has had. Paul Manafort, understandably, feeling pretty confident in talking to Luke earlier today about how those meetings are going and talking about the shifting of the tide and the shifting of the support in Washington for Donald Trump. You're there on the ground. Is that what you're seeing among your colleagues, among fellow Republicans?
I think more than anything, there is a reawakening of an understanding of the importance of this campaign. I mean, it's going to define the next generation in this country. Just on the decisions regarding the Supreme Court alone, we have big challenges in our economy, big challenges internationally with our national security. And I think most Republicans are understanding that we're sure not for Hillary Clinton and we're not for Bernie Sanders, so we're going to have to come behind our candidate. I think we all have a responsibility to be part of that solution. That, of course, is the leadership here in the House. It'll be these presidential candidates as well. They've got to reach out across and bring people together, whoever our victor is.
Representative Luke Messer, appreciate your time. And when you decide who you're voting for, feel free to give us a call and let us know.
I've got a few days left.
All right, we'll let you have a few days.